I would like to call the September 28th, 2022 City Council regular meeting to order. Will everyone please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Vice Mayor Parker,
She is absent with a excused absence.
Councilmember Hutchings,
Present.
Ruffridge,
Here.
Nelson,
Here.
Carey,
Present.
Chilson.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, approval of the agenda and consent agenda. May I have a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda? Ms. Hutchings,
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda as presented.
may I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Carey. Are there any changes to the agenda or consent agenda?
I
Ms.
have
Hutchings.
one change. Item 2, ordinance 2022-030, the rezoning to Creekside Estates. That is a family piece of property, so I will recuse myself on that.
Okay. That is proper, and when we have a vote on the approval of the agenda, we'll show that you did not vote on that particular item. Are there any, would the clerk please read the consent agenda?
Approval of minutes, September 14, 2022, council meeting minutes. New business ordinances for introduction. Ordinance 2022-029, amending Soldotna Municipal Code, Title 17 by establishing a new subchapter 17.10.390, accessory dwelling units, ADU, and amending sections of Soldotna Municipal Code, Titles 1, 13, and 17 to establish standards for accessory dwelling units. Introduced by the city manager. Public hearing scheduled for October 12, 2022. Ordinance 2022-030, rezoning T5NR10W, Section 28, Seward Meridian, KN 2022-023, Soldotna Junction Sub, Creekside Estates, Tract D2, from commercial to rural residential. Introduced by the city manager. Public hearing scheduled for October 12, 2022. Ordinance 2022-031, accepting grant funds from the State of Alaska Department of Education and Early Development and increasing estimated revenues and appropriations by $1,250 in the general fund to attend the annual Association for Rural and Small Libraries Conference. Introduced by the city manager, scheduled for public hearing on October 12, 2022. Ordinance 2022-032, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations by $5,570 in the general fund for a donation received from the Soldotna Library Friends. Introduced by the city manager, public hearing set for October 12, 2022. Ordinance 2022-033, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations by $814,200 in the utility fund and $814,200 in the Utility Systems Improvements Capital Project Fund for the Whistle Hill Sewer Utility Improvement Special Assessment District, SAD project. Introduced by the city manager, public hearing set for October 12, 2022. And that is your consent agenda.
Thank you. Are there any public comments on any of the items just read by the city clerk? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Anyone here in the audience wishing to speak on any of the items that were just read by the city clerk? Seeing none, we'll take a look at Zoom. And I see no hands raised under Zoom. So, having no one wishing to speak, the approval of the agenda and consent agenda is back before the council. Are there any council objections to approving the agenda and consent agenda? Seeing none, the agenda and consent agenda are approved by unanimous consent. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, which will be Item 4, public comments and presentations. Items other than those appearing on the agenda, 3 minutes per speaker, 20 minutes aggregate. Are there any members of the Are there any members from the public who would like to speak on any item not appearing on the agenda. For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. I will remind everyone to please be courteous and respectful during your comments. For those of you in the audience, I request you refrain from applauding, cheering, whistling, clapping, or boisterous behavior during the public comments. Please be respectful of the views of the speakers, even if you do not agree with them. Please observe proper decorum and not engage in personal attacks or disruptive behavior. The council will respectfully listen to your comments. We are not here tonight to engage in a debate, but to listen to your comments and concerns. Again, comments are limited to 3 minutes, 20 minutes aggregate. Please provide your name and address for the record and fill in the sign-in sheet by the microphone. Thank you. Is there anyone here in the audience wishing to speak on any item not appearing on the agenda? Sir, please step forward and state your name and address for the record, and if you could just write it down there on that sheet also. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Greg Russell. My mailing address is P.O. Box 1655, Soldotna. I am here flying the flag for the AML-JIA, the Alaska Municipal League Joint Insurance Association, your insurance provider. I've been under contract with them for the last 19 plus years as their police consultant. Before that, and probably more importantly, I moved to Soldotna in 1981, began working for the city in 1982 until the year 2000 when I left for a very brief time, and then returned in 2002, where I've maintained a residence ever since. I've enjoyed my association with the Alaska Municipal League Joint Insurance Association, and I was very pleased when the city returned. I don't know if you were aware of it, but your membership number in the pool is number 1. The very first organization became a part of that pool. So on behalf of the executive director, Kevin Smith, the deputy director, Brennan Hickok, and all the risk managers and other staff with the AML-JIA, I bring you greeting. There are so many member services that they provide to you. It would be a very long list to go into any detail. I also would just encourage you that if there's anything that organization can do or provide, please reach out to them and take advantage of all their many services. I'd also like to extend a personal greeting to your police chief, Gene Meek. It's a pleasure to meet you, sir. Hope that you receive a very warm welcome and that you enjoy your time with Soldotna. It's a wonderful place. I don't have any other comments. Be happy to answer any questions if there are any at this time.
Any questions from the council? Seeing none?
It's good to see all of you.
And actually, I was on the first original board of directors of the JIA way back in 1987, I believe.
I think it's 87, yes. Yeah.
Now, a long time ago.
Joe Evans is still there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on any item not appearing on the agenda? Sir, please step forward and state your name and address for the record and fill in the form there also, if you could, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay. My name is Joshua Silzo, and I live in the Salamathoff neighborhood in Soldotna, and I thank you for the opportunity to address the council. I've spoken to the council a couple of times just in regard to the whole park issue. I think we all know what that's about. And there's not a lot of us here tonight for one reason or another, so you won't have to listen to us drone on too long. I just want to, again, ask the council. I know the first time I spoke, I asked, and I actually spoke to you, Mr. Ruffridge, and I didn't mean to. I think I'm a little bit of a latecomer. I did not mean to browbeat you or anybody else on the council. Your reputation as someone that has a listening ear to the community, and my neighbor had told me that he'd had a good conversation with you. But I don't mean to pick on anybody here, and I want to make that clear. When I first spoke to the council, I asked the council for a resolution. I read some scholarly statistics, some peer-reviewed stuff that links the kind of performance that took place in the park with pedophilia, and just talked about, the risk to our children, and just, wanting, in particular, wanting some kind of action on public decency. And I realize we don't all agree necessarily on what that means. But I just want to ask the council again for some kind of a gesture. I think that a resolution saying that we're not okay with sexualizing our kids, something for us as parents, and I realize you have militant types come in here from all different perspectives, but I think the vast majority of who you're seeing are parents that just want some reassurance that the city does believe that there are some things that kids shouldn't be exposed to, and we should try to shield them, and that we're working together. The families in this community are working together, the local government in the community, the law enforcement, we're all working together to protect kids from things that kids should be protected from. And so I'm just encouraging you. I mean, I know that there's legal considerations and everything else, and I don't want to belabor that. But I think that the council could do or say something in maybe it's a resolution or something that would just kind of give the parents in this community an idea that we're not really on opposite sides of the fence. We're just trying to sort out how to make this actually work, but that you guys agree with us that there's things that we'd like to protect our kids from in public spaces, whether it's the parks or the streets of the city, schools, anywhere else. That's my comment, and thank you for listening to me again.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else here in the council chambers wishing to speak on any item not appearing on the agenda? Seeing none, I'll move to Zoom, and I see no hands raised there. So moving on to the next agenda item is number 5, Assembly and Legislative Reports. Are there any representatives from the borough or the state in attendance who would like to speak? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. And I see Mr. Cox here from the Assembly. And
thank you. Tyson Cox, Borough Assembly Representative for District 4, Soldotna area. And I don't have a ton to bring in, but I did want to talk to you a little bit about our Policies and Procedures Committee that we had this last meeting. There were not a lot of other items on our agenda. As the meeting before, September 6th, Mayor Pierce did let everyone know that he would not be at this meeting in the second September meeting. And so we did not have a whole lot of things on there, as there probably is a lot of anticipation for Mayor Navarre to take over this next week. So I suspect the next meeting will have a lot of items on that one with the new mayor coming in. I was in the office today, and the ladies in the clerk's office said there's a lot of items needing to be signed. So Monday there will probably be a lot of signing going on. But what I wanted to bring in has to do with when we can have that special election. Last time I came in, I spoke a little bit about Ms. Blankenship's memo, and that was a memo that I had asked her to bring forward. So then we had it was an item not appearing on the regular meeting agenda, and her and I brought that forward because what we wanted to talk about was, for one, when is the exact first date that we could have a special election? That date is January 9th. But then as she began to speak, that is the first date that we can have it, but it isn't necessarily the first time that we want to have that. She was recommending to have it a little bit later. And part of that has to do with, I have the piece of code here actually. At a borough code, it's 4.80.070, absentee voting. And so what it's talking about is when we have our absentee mail-in ballots, is the way the code reads is they cannot even be applied for until the first of the year. And so a January 9th election day would be very difficult if we have folks that want to apply for that, then get a ballot, and then have a ballot returned by the 9th. It sounds like it's 9 days, but when you start talking business days, it's very few days altogether. And so one of the conversations we had was about having it at the end of January, somewhere around the 31st of January. My personal suggestion would maybe be the first Tuesday of February, and mostly just to stay in line with when we've had other elections so that it's on that first Tuesday of a month. And then that would hopefully give people enough time, about a month, to get in any absentee applications that they want if they would like to vote absentee for that special election. So that's really all I wanted to bring forward tonight, just so that if you're talking to people, people can know that we are looking to have that come forward, because I know it's been a great concern of residents of the whole district, but also just in the city of Soldotna as well. And then let them know that we are looking at, it would probably be the end of January, maybe the beginning of February, somewhere in that range. And if there's any questions.
That'd be about Super Bowl Sunday, pretty close to it.
It might be very close to that.
You could have people still trying to recuperate from Super Bowl.
Well, I personally, those dates around January and February are going to be tough. We're going to have a lot of people out of state. There's going to be a lot of people gone. I suspect it will be a fairly low number of people voting, but that's just my opinion. I hope I'm wrong. I hope there's an exceptional number of people that vote.
Mr. Carey.
I very much want to say thank you for coming and providing us with information. To the extent that you can, I hope that you will do everything possible to increase the possibility of people to vote, as well as for people to run and to actually have a campaign. Thank you.
That's a wonderful comment. I think what the community is asking for is as soon as possible. I think even going into February, there will probably be people that won't want us to do that. But with the logistics and getting, because I agree we need to do it very quickly, but we also need to give those folks that may not be able to come in and will be absent the option to do that. So we definitely have to give that amount of time. But as far as giving much more time than that, I don't think that's going to happen. That's just my opinion, though.
Will there be mail-in ballots allowed?
Absentee mail-in. We've been told that it is a possibility in a special election that it could go mail-in ballots. With the climate of our area right now, I highly doubt that's going to happen.
I certainly think that might increase the participation if we did have the mail-in ballots.
I don't disagree with you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the council? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Cox.
Thanks.
And I see no one else from state or borough here, or any hands raised on Zoom. So we move on to the next item on the agenda, and that'll be number 6, public hearings, ordinance 2022-028, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations by $16,445 in the utility fund for replacement of a fire hydrant located at the intersection of Birch Street and South Soldotna Avenue, introduced by the city manager. May I have a motion to enact? Ms. Hutchings.
I'll make a motion to enact ordinance 2022-028.
May I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Carey. A report from the administration.
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. I'd like to ask Mike Allen, our utility manager, to give this report so he can speak to the ordinance, but also give a brief update on what we've been doing in terms of hydrant repairs and maintenance.
Thank you. Good evening. This hydrant was one hydrant that was found to be inoperable and not being able to be repaired based on removing any of the internal components. This would require actually the whole hydrant to be removed and a new hydrant to be replaced. Currently, the city has some fire hydrants out at the boneyard that could be put in, so this would be a use of existing city resources.
Mr. Chilson.
So I was just surprised that the $16,000 total reflected here doesn't include the actual cost of the hydrant. That's just the cost of installation. What does a new hydrant cost?
A new hydrant is running about $10,000,
Okay. And
roughly.
How many spares do we typically keep on hand?
Right now, we have 6.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Thank you for your report. We'll move on to the public hearing is now open. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Is there anyone here in the audience wishing to comment on ordinance 2022-028? Seeing none, a look at Zoom, and I see no hands raised there. Having no one else wishing to speak, the item is back before the council. Is there any council comments or questions for the administration? Seeing none, we will bring it back and call for the vote.
Councilmember Hutchings,
Yes.
Ruffridge,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Carey,
Yes?
Chilson.
Yes.
You have 5 yes votes and 1 absent.
Ordinance 2022-028 passed on a 5-0 vote with 1 absence. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is item 7, new business, and everything under that was under the consent agenda. We're on to number 8, mayor and council report. Mayor's report and proclamations. I'll make my comments fairly short. Had a couple of opportunities this week to listen in on comments by and interviews by some of the people running for statewide election and our local election. Attended the Chamber of Commerce Forum today for the 2 city council seats, and that went very well. My other comments to add is I'd like to thank our staff. Our staff throughout the city does an absolutely outstanding job in doing, keeping things running smoothly and helping us out and actually teaching us sometimes on some things that are going on. So I appreciate everything they do, and I think we owe them a round of applause at some point in time here. Last thing, don't forget to vote on Tuesday. Very, very important, and hope everybody gets out there and stops in and votes. And that's all I have for tonight. Council reports on boards and commissions, we have none this evening. City managers report. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. There's a laydown item that was provided. I asked our Finance Director, Melanie Imholt, to prepare a memo summarizing the certified sales tax revenue dollars for the fiscal year that ended on June 30th. The borough reports those numbers to us, and then for the end of the year, we like to wait until we get their final adjustments, because sometimes that final adjustment can be relatively significant. And as you can see from the memo, the revenue trends were extremely positive, bigger than I've ever seen that I'm aware of. So sales tax revenue was up 12% compared to the prior year. And as you know, sales tax is the primary revenue source for the city, making up the bulk of our revenue. And that really is a 2-year trend, because 2021 was up almost 9% over that prior year. So we're looking at a 2-year increase in sales tax revenue of more than 20%. Our costs are also going up, so this isn't all surplus, but it's a positive trend, and it's different than what the city has seen in the past, which was very modest growth. So we traditionally had between 1% and 2% growth a year. A couple things are happening. Obviously, inflation, the cost of goods and services is much higher now than it's been in the past. We have online sales tax, which continues to grow as a source of revenue as more sellers come online. We've talked about that. But she did a breakdown there by category just to give a little bit more information in terms of which are the line of services within our brick and mortar businesses here locally to see what's happening there. And if the council has other questions or things you'd like us to investigate or do some more analysis on, we'd be happy to do that. This will be really kind of the anchoring our discussions as we start to prepare the next biennial budget. This will be our most recent full year of sales tax data that we can then use for our projections for the years to come. And that concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Carey.
Thank you. I'm wondering, and I'm sure you did, but I'll say it that way anyway. We obviously got money from the federal government that's passed down that we gave out to people to help businesses and that. And so do you have any sense of how much of an influence this increase was affected by the additional funds that we gave out to people to spend?
Thank you, Councilmember Carey. Through the mayor, we have not done that analysis. I could spend some time with Melanie discussing whether that's something that we would be able to have some comments on. It'll be difficult. We would look at the programs in terms of the timing and when the different programs came out to be. We'd have to sit and think through that a little bit before I could provide you with any answer on that. We'd be happy to look at it.
So follow up if I could.
Yeah, go
And the
ahead.
reason I ask that, again, these are wonderful numbers, no question. However, they're probably, I'm going to say a little bit unnatural in that we had extra things that we put into the community and into the dynamics. And so that in forecasting for the future, well, I sure hope we're not going to have any more pandemics. I assume that we're not going to have those extra funds. And so that to assume that these numbers are going to hold, I think would be unrealistic. I think it's going to be a little bit lower. And that's the only reason I ask of that. Because again, and I just think of such things as our program to promote at the end of the year, to promote buying local. Again, I think some of those things we have to kind of factor out to get a more accurate figure. But these are wonderful numbers.
Mr. Rufford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do you have a sense of, or numbers about what percentage of the increase is attributed to online sales tax?
Councilmember Ruffridge, to the mayor, I don't have the memo in front of me, but we did break it out, so quite a bit. Oh, thank you, Mayor Whitney. In terms of actual dollars, you can see that the online sales revenue went from $279,000 in FY21 to $471, but that's still a very small piece of the overall sales tax revenue piece when you compare it with the brick and mortar numbers, which are 8.3 and 9.15. So the bulk of that increase is in local spending here and not in internet sales. We don't know exactly how big that pie of internet sales is going to be. We don't have a sense. I can tell you that last fall, only about half of the top large internet companies were registered. So we do still expect that internet online sales piece to grow, but not in a way where it's going to converge with what we're seeing locally in brick and mortar.
Okay, so then you would say, so as a sales tax revenue by source, online sales only accounts for about 5% of our total, just under 5%. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the council? Saying none, thank you for the report. We'll move on to the agenda item 10, public comments. Members of the public will have 3 minutes to comment. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Is there anyone here in the chambers wishing to make any public comments? Seeing no one here in the chamber, I'll go back to Zoom and see if there's any hands raised. And I see no hands raised, so we will move on to the next item on the agenda, and that will be council comments. And I'll start with Mr. Nelson tonight.
And thank you. I apologize for not being able to be there in person. I've had something to bring me out of town here for a couple of weeks, but I'll be out here next week as well. And I just wanted to share that because by the time I got back here last weekend, it was too late for me to vote absentee in person. But did you know you can vote by fax? So there's not much excuse for folks, and our city clerk helped me out tremendously. So I just want to encourage folks, even if they're not there, there's all kinds of options, and hope to see a good turnout here for our municipal elections. And that's it for me tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Ruffridge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to say, I'm sad that Mr. Silzo left. I did appreciate his comments today, and I thought that was really actually quite nice to hear from him in regards to some comments that he had made previously. So, Mr. Silzo, if you're listening, thank you for that. That was much appreciated. And then I'll echo Mr. Nelson's comments about please get out and vote. Do it early or do it on the day or fax it in, whatever floats your boat. But make sure we vote on Tuesday. Thank you.
Ms. Hutchings.
No comments.
Thank you. Mr. Chilson.
No comments.
Mr. Carey.
You bet. Thank you. Watching what's going on in Florida and probably Georgia and maybe South Carolina all the way up to Tennessee, it certainly allows all of us to see how important local government is, state government, federal government, all the many people that work in public safety, that do all these things, and we often don't even think about them. We just anticipate that they're there, and if something happens, they're going to take care of it. Tonight, again, their courage and their exceptionalism is being shown, as it has been for the last few days and will be as it goes forward. So I just want to voice, I greatly appreciate all those people who make our life so much better, and particularly those who are in public safety, those who keep the roads open. And I particularly have noted the discussion about electricity. Having been on the HA board for parts of 30 years, linemen have a very difficult job. And they have to go out when it's not nice. Somehow it just isn't the beautiful, easy day when they go out. It's when it's terrible. I will always remember listening to one that across the bay, across Kachemak Bay over Christmas to New Year's, actually had to put a line back on a tree by helicopter in terms of being suspended, because that was the only way they could get the line back up. And so that there's no doubt that right now there are these public servants who are absolutely risking their life, trying to make things better for the rest of us. And I just greatly appreciate it. And again, it makes me feel very good about the people that work for the city of Soldotna. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carey. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, number 12, executive session, city clerk recruitment process, AS 44.62.310C2, subjects that tend to prejudice the reputation and character of any person. May I have a motion to enter into executive session? Mr. Chilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would move to enter into an executive session to discuss a personnel matter in accordance with AS 4462.310C2. The discussion of the city clerk recruitment process is a subject that may tend to prejudice the reputation or character of an applicant for city employment, therefore may be held in executive session. The city employee to be discussed has elected to have the discussion take place in executive session. The executive session will include Mayor Whitney, City Council members, City Manager Queen, Human Resources Director O'Regan, and Interim City Clerk Hewitt. Deputy Clerk DeBill may be included if Council requests his presence.
May I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Carey. Are there any objections to convening into executive session? Seeing no objections, we will convene into executive session. And for those attending through Zoom, the Zoom meeting will be resumed after the executive session. After the executive session is over, the meeting will also briefly resume at soldotna.org/streaming. Thank you. Oops. May I have a motion to come out of executive session?
I'll make a motion to come out of executive session.
Second? Thank you, Mr. Ruffridge. Are there any objections to convening back into regular session? Seeing none, we'll back into regular session by unanimous consent. Are there any motions?
Mr. Mayor, I would move to authorize administration to offer a $15,000 hiring bonus to well-qualified applicants for the position of city clerk.
May I have a second? Mr. Ruffridge, thank you. Any discussion? Any objections? Better call the roll, though.
Councilmember Ruffridge,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Carey,
Yes.
Chilson,
Yes.
Hutchings.
Yes.
You have 5 yes votes and 1 absent.
Thank you. That motion passed on the 5-0 vote with 1 absent. Another motion, Mr. Chilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would move to discharge the special hiring committee for the position of city clerk.
And I have a second from Ms. Hutchings. Any discussion? You can call the roll, please.
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
Carey,
Yes.
Chilson,
Yes.
Hutchings,
Yes.
Ruffridge.
Yes.
You have 5 yes votes and 1 absence.
Thank you. The motion passed 5-0 with 1 absent. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, meeting announcements. October 5th, 2022, Planning and Zoning Commission meeting at 5:30 PM. October 12th, 2022, City Council meeting at 6 PM. And seeing no further business, we are adjourned.